On my daughter's most important day, I stood frozen in front of the hotel lobby. A blown-up photo of me was placed right at the entrance with bold, capitalized letters, "Do not enter." Across my face was a red circle slashed through with a bold X. Inside, the chatter of guests rang out joyfully, and the gentle sound of string instruments filled the air, yet for me, everything collapsed into a cold, humiliating void. At that very moment, as I turned my back and walked away, I thought I had lost my daughter forever. But only a short time later, a chain of unexpected events pulled me back, forcing me to confront the terrifying secret hidden behind the man my daughter believed she would spend her whole life with. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. At her wedding, my daughter hung my photo at the entrance with the caption, "No entry," a cruel blow from the only child who was supposed to be my pride and joy. When my eyes first landed on the framed picture, displayed prominently on its stand under the hotel's golden lights, my legs froze as if nailed to the marble floor. A few guests passing by glanced at me, their expressions a mix of shock and pity, as though they were witnessing a stranger cast out from his own family. I reached out and let my trembling fingers graze the cold edge of the frame, only to drop my hand in despair when I saw the bold, defiant ink spelling, "No entry." My heart clenched as though stabbed by a blade, humiliation swelling so fiercely that not even tears could escape. I turned and walked away, my shoulders heavy with disgrace. Each step out of the ballroom carved deeper into my chest, severing what little faith I had left. While behind me, music soared and applause rang out, joy I had once dreamed of sharing with my daughter. In my mind, a memory surfaced, Emily as a little girl, gripping my hand and giggling, "Daddy, on my wedding day, you'll be the one to walk me down the aisle." Yet now, those same hands had erased me from the most important day of her life. Instead of celebrating, I walked away in silence, leaving behind not only the glittering celebration, but also the broken dream of a happy family. But 3 hours later, my phone exploded with 73 missed calls, each notification flaring red like a warning light. The betrayal of my daughter had somehow transformed into chaos I couldn't yet name. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are watching right now. The phone buzzed relentlessly on the leather armrest, its vibration rattling against the wood like a wasp trapped in a glass. It was as though the device itself wanted to rip apart the fragile piece I had been desperately trying to hold on to. When the screen lit up, Emily's face appeared in a burst of pixels, her eyes sparkling with a joy so fierce it seemed to leap through the glass while my heart plummeted under the crushing weight of dread. "Dad, I have incredible news. I'm engaged," she announced, her voice ringing with uncontainable excitement. The coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. The steam curled upward, forgotten, while behind her I glimpsed the life she was stepping into, gleaming marble countertops, glass walls stretching from floor to ceiling, and the glittering expanse of San Francisco's skyline sparkling like a promise. Then she thrust her left hand toward the camera, the movement so sudden I flinched. The diamond caught every sliver of light in the room and hurled it back at me, so brilliant it nearly blinded my eyes. But the brilliance brought no warmth. It was cold, sharp, a jewel that felt less like love and more like a blade, carving deep into my chest with invisible precision. "Look at this ring, Dad. Isn't it gorgeous?" Emily's voice trembled with happiness. Before I could shape a reply, another face entered the frame. Andrew Kensington. His jawline was chiseled, his dark hair arranged as though it had never known disorder, and his smile gleamed with a polish so rehearsed it might have belonged in a toothpaste commercial. Emily leaned into him instinctively, her body angled toward his as if he were her anchor. But his eyes never sought mine. Instead, they slid past the camera, detached and cool, assessing me not as family but as an outsider intruding into his domain. "Mr. Rice," he said with a smoothness that reeked of practice, his tone coated in the kind of confidence I had learned long ago to distrust. "I'm Andrew Kensington. I promise your daughter will be the happiest woman in the world." The words were honeyed, but his body betrayed him. his hand pressed firmly on Emily's shoulder, thumb drawing slow circles that carried no tenderness, only ownership. On his other hand, a gold ring spun ceaselessly around his pinky, a small, compulsive tick that betrayed the nerves lurking beneath his polished exterior. "Dad, Andrew's a successful cryptocurrency investor," Emily gushed, her voice glowing with pride. "He has such ambitious plans. His portfolio includes blockchain startups, NFT ventures." "The market's been volatile," Andrew cut in softly, his interruption wrapped in a veneer of calm authority. His gaze flicked down to something just out of sight, perhaps a second phone, perhaps a watch. The gleam of his timepiece caught the light deliberately, as though placed there to be admired, not used. It was a performance, and I was his audience. "When's the wedding?" I asked, forcing my voice to sound casual, though my throat had tightened. "The 15th of March, Emily squealed. "I know it's soon, but Andrew found this amazing venue, the Fairmont San Francisco. They had a last-minute cancellation. Can you believe it? 2 months?" I repeated slowly, as though tasting the disbelief in my own mouth. Memories of long-planned weddings, years of saving, patient anticipation, and family effort clashed violently with the cold efficiency of Andrew's smile. "When you know, sir," he replied, his lips tightening just enough to reveal the impatience beneath the charm. They chattered on about flowers, caterers, and table settings, their excitement filling the space while my silence grew heavier. At last, the call ended. I sat back in my leather chair, the room dimming as night pressed against the windows. The screen went black, and in its reflection I saw not only my sorrow but something worse, the gnawing anxiety of a father watching his daughter step into a dangerous game, one she didn't even realize she was playing. The newspaper I had been reading earlier lay abandoned on the floor, its pages crumpled. The coffee at my side had gone stone cold, its bitterness untouched. In the gathering shadows, my doubts about Andrew multiplied, too vague to define but too immense to ignore, dark shapes breeding in the corners of my mind, waiting for their moment to strike. 13 days of restless nights had dragged across the calendar like lead weights since that video call. I had lain awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Andrew's polished smile, the proprietary press of his hand on Emily's shoulder, the way his eyes had slid past me as though I were irrelevant. By the 13th night, my nerves felt frayed to threads. So when Andrew finally called, asking for a private meeting, I agreed partly out of curiosity, but mostly out of a gnawing, almost desperate need to unearth what it was about this man that rattled me to my bones. The cafe in Manhattan's Upper East Side was exactly what I imagined he would choose, sleek, expensive, and steeped in understated luxury. The place smelled faintly of varnished oak panels and roasted beans ground to perfection, a scent that should have been comforting. Instead, it pressed down on me like a heavy curtain, suffocating. Around me, men in tailored suits polished their Rolex watches with casual movements, their low voices weaving deals worth millions. I was supposed to belong to this world I had, once, but tonight every glittering surface, every glass of imported wine, only amplified the quiet dread pooling in my chest. Then I saw him. Andrew sat in a corner booth, navy suit sharp as a blade, posture erect, expression almost too composed. Yet even across the room I caught a flicker, a quick dart of the eyes, a slight tightening at the jaw that betrayed unease. When he noticed me, he stood at once, extending his hand. "Mr. Rice, thank you for coming." His handshake was firm, deliberately so, yet clammy, the skin cold and damp like a towel left too long in water. It didn't reassure, it warned. My instincts recoiled even before we Saturday. We settled into the booth, the soft leather creaking under our weight. Between us, a small porcelain cup rested in its saucer. Andrew's hand immediately found it, rotating the cup precisely 90 degrees, over and over. Porcelain scraped faintly against polished wood with a grating dryness. It was a ritual, a tick, and it stretched every pause between his polished sentences into something oppressive. "How are the wedding preparations going?" I asked, attempting lightness. "Wonderful," he replied at once. His tone was bright, words smooth, but his eyes slid to the side, never touching mine. Actually, that's part of why I wanted to meet. He leaned forward, lowering his voice, wrapping the words in a hushed sincerity that sounded rehearsed, almost theatrical. My investments are temporarily frozen due to regulatory review. Nothing serious. It should all be resolved in 6 months. But... He exhaled, the sound carefully measured, like an actor nailing a line. Emily dreams of a fairy tale wedding. I can't bear to disappoint her. His lips formed devotion, but his eyes betrayed calculation. They flicked, not toward me, but to the pen lying near my hand, as though the only thing that mattered was whether I'd use it. The venue requires full payment, upfront flowers, catering, everything, he continued. His tone was fluid, practiced, designed to sound casual but heavy enough to apply pressure. It's more than I can liquidate without incurring heavy losses. How much do you need, Andrew? My voice came out steadier than I felt. 50,000, he answered quickly, as though he had rehearsed the figure. That will cover it. I'll repay every cent by the end of the year. With interest, of course. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a neat bundle of documents. They unfolded like a magician's trick, stamped with official seals, littered with dense legal language. They looked legitimate, almost too legitimate, too perfectly timed. The way he slid them across the table reminded me of a conjurer revealing a card you already knew was rigged. Mr. Rice, he said, voice thick with emotion now. Just the right tremor added. I love your daughter more than anything. I just want to give her the perfect beginning she deserves. He was good, too good. Vulnerability that sounded genuine, paperwork that looked convincing. His performance pressed down on me from all sides. $50,000 was not a small sum, but neither would it break me completely. I found myself cornered by a mixture of paternal fear and guilt. All right, I heard myself say, the words falling heavy, foreign, as though spoken by someone else. But Emily must never know about this. Of course, Andrew said quickly, seizing the lifeline. It would devastate her to think I couldn't provide for her. Relief washed over his face. So fast and so complete it seemed like he had rehearsed it in a mirror. I picked up my pen. My hand trembled as I signed. Each stroke of ink felt like a chisel striking stone, carving my suspicions deeper into my chest. The moment the signature was complete, Andrew lunged forward, snatching the check with an eagerness he barely restrained. He folded it with care, but the swiftness of the move gave him away. It was not gratitude, it was triumph. You won't regret this, Mr. Rice, he said, voice smooth once again. Emily will have the most beautiful wedding San Francisco has ever seen. And then he was gone, excusing himself with vague talk of urgent calls to vendors. I remained, alone in that cafe that smelled of power and wealth, surrounded by the clink of silverware and the low hum of business chatter, but I was no longer part of that world. My untouched coffee sat cold on the table, the bitterness rising in my throat like a warning. When I finally stood to leave, my wallet felt strangely heavy, though lighter by a check. What weighed me down was not relief, but a secret that already pulsed with the guilt and certainty of a mistake. 6 days had crawled by since that meeting, each one heavier, more suffocating than the last. The hours did not pass so much as they dragged, pulling me behind them like a prisoner shackled to time itself. I wandered my Brooklyn apartment like a ghost haunting his own life, the cordless phone never far from my reach, as if it were both a lifeline and an executioner's bell. My own footsteps echoed against the hardwood floors, sharp and hollow, the sound strange to my ears, as though I were trespassing in a stranger's house. Every wall, painted a clean white years ago when life still felt full, now seemed like a blank page that reflected nothing back to me but silence. Once, these walls had heard the laughter of family dinners, the faint hum of Eleanor's favorite records, the soft creak of Emily running down the hall in her slippers. Now they answered me only with emptiness. In the bedroom, Eleanor's photograph sat waiting on the nightstand, the silver frame catching the dim lamplight. I lifted it, pressed my forehead against the cold glass as if I could bridge the chasm of time and hear her voice whisper through the stillness. But all I had was the frozen smile of a woman who had known me better than anyone, a smile that could no longer guide me. The chill of the glass seeped into my skin, making her absence sharper, almost unbearable. Eleanor always said, "Truth is more important than comfort." The words circled through my mind like a distant chant I couldn't escape. She never trusted smooth talkers, never mistook charm for character. She had an instinct sharper than any background check, an unshakable radar for people who weren't what they seemed. And here I was violating every rule she had drilled into me about protecting our daughter, about protecting Emily. The phone buzzed in my hand, jolting me back. Emily's contact photo lit up the screen, her youthful smile, her mother's same intuitive eyes staring out at me. Only now those eyes were clouded, veiled by love, by trust, by a devotion to a man who might be lying about everything. I pressed the call button, then froze, heart hammering. I hung up before it rang. My thumb hovered, then pressed again, unable to resist. "Dad, perfect timing." Emily's voice burst through, warm, cheerful, bubbling with life. "I just got back from the florist." I swallowed hard. "How are the wedding preparations going?" I asked, trying to coat my voice with casualness. But my tone was stretched thin, like fabric ready to tear. "Wonderful," she said, her words spilling fast, effortless. "Andrew is so attentive to every detail. He's handling everything, the band, the photographer, even the hotel staff. I hardly have to worry about a thing except showing up in my dress." Each word of admiration fell into my ear like heavy stones, sinking me deeper into helplessness. I could hear the devotion glowing in her tone, the way she wrapped Andrew's name in light, and it made my skin crawl. "Emily," I started, but the word hung in the air. The promise I had made to Andrew in that cafe returned like an invisible rope coiled around my throat, tightening every time I tried to speak. "Of course I know him well enough, Dad," she said quickly, defensively, the brightness in her tone edged with steel. I could hear her moving around her apartment, the faint shuffle of magazines or stems of flowers being arranged. "Just parental worries," I managed. "You've only known him a few months." "6 months," she cut in sharply, her voice rising with conviction. "And when you meet the right person, time doesn't matter. You taught me to trust my instincts, remember? Well, my instincts tell me Andrew is perfect." Perfect! The word rang in my skull like a warning bell. Nothing and no one was perfect, especially not a man who boasted of perfection. "I'm sure you're right, sweetheart," I forced out, even as dread clawed at me. "I can't wait to dance with you at your wedding." When the call ended, I sat for a long time in the stillness of the kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the clock, all of it suddenly deafening in the absence of her voice. At last I reached for the leather journal Eleanor had once given me. Most of its pages were blank. I had never been the type to write my thoughts, but tonight was different. Tonight I needed permanence. I needed to carve this mistake into something I could not run from. The pen trembled in my grip, blotching ink onto the page like bruises spreading across pale skin. Slowly, painfully, I etched the words, each one feeling like a chisel strike against stone. The 9th of February, 2025. Gave Andrew $50,000 for wedding expenses. Emily doesn't know. Something feels wrong, but I made a promise. I closed the journal, the snap of leather against paper louder than it should have been. It pressed against my chest with a weight that nearly buckled me. From the window, I watched life move on without me. A young couple strolled down the sidewalk, hands entwined, their laughter spilling out into the night air. Their joy rose to my ears like music I could no longer hear. I realized, with a pang so sharp it stung my throat, that I envied them not their wealth, not their youth, but their innocence, their simple, unguarded happiness. The kind of happiness I, as a father, could no longer grasp. The wedding was 5 weeks away. 5 weeks for Andrew to either prove my doubts unfounded or for me to discover how catastrophically I had misjudged the man who wanted to marry my daughter. I turned off the kitchen light, Eleanor's picture still in my hand, and carried it with me to bed. If I was making a mistake, at least I would not make it alone. 3 days had crawled by since I had written those words in Eleanor's journal, each one stretching like an eternity, each hour gnawed by regret. Now I found myself standing on the bustling sidewalk of San Francisco, staring through the towering windows of Le Bernardin, this temple of French cuisine where wealth and status gathered like moths to chandeliers. Inside, crystal chandeliers spilled light across the dining room, shimmering cascades that rained down on snow-white tablecloths folded with geometric precision. Silver cutlery gleamed beneath the glow, glasses of champagne caught the light like liquid stars, and waiters moved silently, their steps rehearsed like a ballet. It should have been dazzling. Instead, it felt suffocating. Every breath I took caught in my throat, clumsy and out of place, as though the very air inside the restaurant had been filtered to keep men like me out. Through the glass I saw them, Emily and Andrew, laughing over their champagne flutes. She leaned forward, eyes alight, while Andrew reclined slightly, smile controlled, like a man already certain of his victory. The morning flight from JFK had left me jet-lagged, my eyelids heavy, my thoughts sluggish. Still, I had forced myself into the shower, pressed a razor across my face with trembling hands, and buttoned myself into my best suit, a navy Brooks Brothers that once made me feel confident. But under the blaze of chandeliers and the gleam of couture gowns, it felt cheap cloth pretending to be silk, threadbare dignity, barely holding together. "Dad!" Emily's voice broke through the din the moment I stepped inside. She rushed toward me, her emerald green dress catching the light as it flared with each step. For an instant, her smile was pure sunlight, and my heart nearly unclenched. But then I saw it, the faint smudge of weariness at the corners of her eyes, a shadow that no one else would notice, but a father would. She smelled of expensive perfume when she hugged me, and for a fleeting second, I wished the world had stopped right there, before Andrew's shadow fell over us again. Andrew rose deliberately from the corner table. Every movement seemed rehearsed, as if even the act of standing were part of a performance meant to impress. His charcoal pinstripe suit looked freshly poured onto him, as though he'd stepped out of the pages of a glossy magazine. And in that moment, I realized $50,000 of my savings was already parading itself across his shoulders. "Mr. Rice, so wonderful to see you again." His handshake lingered, too long, too firm. His thumb pressed into the joint of my knuckle, not painfully, but pointedly. It wasn't a greeting. It was a test. A reminder of who controlled the board. "Please, sit," Andrew said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. He chose his seat so that he faced the full expanse of the dining room, as though he were its commander surveying his kingdom. Before I could even open the menu, Andrew flicked his wrist toward the sommelier. He launched into an elaborate discussion of vintages, oak aging, and tannins, his tone polished to the point of parody. "I've taken the liberty of ordering a Chassagne Montrachet," he announced smoothly, as though bestowing a gift. "It pairs beautifully with the seafood here." The performance was flawless, leaving me feeling like an intruder at my own table, a man forced into the wings of a play that had once centered around his daughter. "The menu changes seasonally," Andrew continued, barely glancing at the leather-bound folders the waiter carried. He didn't offer me one. "But I recommend the John Dory, unless, of course, you'd prefer something more traditional. En part." The word traditional dripped with condescension, every syllable sharpened like a blade. "Dad's actually quite adventurous," Emily cut in brightly, her hand reaching across the table to squeeze mine. "Remember when you tried sushi in Chinatown?" Her smile was earnest, but her tone sounded rehearsed, like she had already been trained to play the part of Andrew's defender. Andrew's smile never wavered. "Do you still use a checkbook, Mr. Rice? How authentic." The words were light, but they pierced like needles. His voice wasn't conversing, it was carving, each phrase chipping away at the space between us, hammering me into the role of relic, outdated and irrelevant. My jaw clenched. Still, I forced my tone steady. Sometimes the old ways still work best. Of course," Andrew said airily. He leaned back, arm draped across Emily's shoulders in a gesture that was more claim than comfort. His eyes flicked toward me, glittering. "Emily, Your father probably remembers when Bitcoin cost just pennies. Andrew, maybe we should talk about something else, I interjected, my voice low, brittle as glass. Ah, forgive me. He dipped his head with mock courtesy. Not everyone adapts to new realities as quickly as I do. Then, turning to Emily, his tone shifted into exaggerated concern. Sweetheart, should we explain the basics of cryptocurrency, or would that be too much for him? Emily giggled. The sound was soft, sweet, and it tore at me like claws. She wasn't mocking me, not really, but the laugh still left me hollow, made me feel like a fragile artifact in the museum of my daughter's new life. The first course arrived, scallops, perfectly seared, arranged with surgical precision on porcelain plates. Andrew's knife slid through them with the exactness of a surgeon at an operating table. He spoke all the while, voice smooth, dissecting market volatility, supply chains, blockchain futures. It wasn't scallops he was carving. It was me, my authority, my dignity, sliced thin in front of my daughter. Every so often, he would toss me a scrap. You might find this interesting, Mr. Rice, he'd say, before plunging back into jargon meant to exclude me. Emily gazed at him as though he were reciting poetry. Her admiration was genuine, and its brightness only deepened the shadows pressing on my chest. Dad, you're lucky to have such a son-in-law, she said softly, and my heart sank. When the bill came, Andrew made a grand gesture, producing a sleek black American Express card with a flourish. Please, Mr. Rice, he said, dismissing my attempt to contribute with a wave of his hand. This is my treat. But then, as he handed the card to the waiter, his eyebrow lifted barely, subtly, the smallest motion, but sharp as a knife. A reminder. $50,000 was nothing but a drop in his ocean. Outside, the night had grown damp. I climbed into a taxi while Andrew helped Emily into his Tesla. Through the misted window, I watched him lean down, press a kiss against her forehead. To her, it must have felt tender. To me, it was a seal, a brand, a claim. His laughter echoed into the night air as the Tesla pulled away, a sound too triumphant, too rehearsed. It lingered in my ears long after the cab turned the corner. Something was very, very wrong with Andrew Kensington. Sleep was impossible. I lay in my generic hotel bed until 11:30, staring at the ceiling as if it were slowly turning above me. Every time I closed my eyes, Andrew's face snapped back into view, his smug, practiced smile, the crushing, performative handshake, the restless, evasive eyes that never quite met mine. It felt like I was being hunted not by a man, but by the weight of my own dread. At last I gave up. Still in my wrinkled dinner shirt, tie loosened like a failed noose, I moved to the cramped desk by the window. The hotel's Wi-Fi password was taped to the base of the lamp in faded Sharpie. I opened my laptop. The blank search bar stared back like an interrogator's light. Andrew Kensington, I typed. The first page bloomed with polish. A pristine LinkedIn, glowing tech blog quotes, photos from panels and rooftop events too consistent, too curated, too clean. I narrowed at San Francisco and sank to the third page, where the veneer finally cracked. A business registration for Kensington Digital Ventures, filed only 6 months ago. The listed address, a UPS store mailbox. My fingers trembled. Andrew Kensington fraud, I typed. The screen flickered, then filled with court documents. Los Angeles County Superior Court. Case number CV-202478891. Defendant, Andrew James Kensington. Allegations: misappropriation of funds, identity theft, investment fraud. Court case in Los Angeles. Investment fraud. I heard myself whisper to the empty room, voice dry as paper. I clicked through the filings, my hands unsteady. The plaintiff was a 31-year-old woman named Sophia Martinez, who had given Andrew $180,000 for what she believed were cryptocurrency investments. A photo appeared, a pretty brunette with trusting eyes, the same open, hopeful look Emily had when she laughed. My blood turned to ice. I searched Andrew Kensington plus Los Angeles victims. More names surfaced, grim as headstones. Lily Chen, $95,000. Rachel Walsh, $240,000. Always the same pattern. Young, successful women. The same promises of exclusive opportunities. The same engineered whirlwind of romance. The same bottomless losses. Andrew Kensington accused of misappropriating $200,000. I read from a clipped news brief, my voice cracking in the quiet. But it was the photo gallery that seized my lungs. Andrew with Sophia at what looked like an engagement party. Andrew with Lily over a candlelit dinner. Andrew with Rachel, her left hand raised just so, flashing a diamond ring identical to Emily's. I spent the next 4 hours feeding the hotel's business center printer until it screamed. Court filings, police reports, victim statements. Pages slid out in a relentless chain, pooling across the desk and onto the carpet like confetti from hell. With every document, the costume shed another stitch. Andrew had used at least 3 surnames: Kensington, Morrison, Richards, and specialized in targeting women on dating apps. He built elaborate personas, arranged the perfect engagement, then, over exactly 6 months, insinuated himself into accounts and access, bleeding trust into zero. By 5 a.m., paper eclipsed the desk. Coffee cups ringed the evidence like spent shells. My collar hung open. My hands shook. Everywhere I looked, photos of Andrew's prior victims, screenshots of fraudulent term sheets, testimony from families hollowed out by shame. My God, I said to the stale air, what is he doing to my daughter? Outside, San Francisco woke politely: first-light joggers, early commuters, the whir of a city convinced of its own goodness. Inside room 412, my world collapsed into criminal patterns and broken promises. I sorted documents into thick manila folders, one for each victim. Sophia's stack was heaviest: 2 years of fighting in court before she gave up. Lily had tried warning others online until Andrew's attorneys smothered her with threats. Rachel had vanished from social media entirely. The last file made me nauseous. A psychological profile attributed to a white-collar unit classic, narcissistic patterns with sociopathic traits, a particular skill in exploiting familial bonds to achieve financial objectives. I didn't need the jargon. I had seen the result. Dawn crept through the curtains as I arranged the evidence chronologically. My phone read 6:47 a.m. Emily would be getting ready for work soon, probably humming wedding songs, while Andrew checked his watch and planned his next move. I reached for the phone with steady hands. The time for secrets had ended. Valentine's Day arrived bright and cruel, crystalline California sunlight slicing across my desk where Andrew's history lay spread like a deck of marked cards. Every page told the same story: romance, manipulation, financial devastation. At exactly 7:15 a.m., I dialed Emily. She answered on the second ring, voice sparkling with the particular joy of a bride 3 weeks from her wedding. "Morning, Dad. Did you sleep well? Wasn't dinner amazing?" The happiness in her voice sharpened what I had to do. "Emily," I said, "I need you to sit down. I'm getting ready for work, but what's wrong? You sound so serious." And I held Sophia Martinez's court filing like a talisman. "Emily, Andrew asked me for $50,000 for the wedding. You told me he was a millionaire." Silence tightened over the line, drum taut. "You're lying," she said at last, voice breaking. "Andrew would have told me." "He said his assets were frozen," I said, "and he needed money for the venue. He made me promise not to tell you." "That's impossible. Andrew shows me his accounts all the time. He has over $2 million. He has a fraud case," I said quietly. "I have the documents in front of me. Los Angeles County Superior Court, case CV-20247891. He stole money from a woman named Sophia Martinez." There was movement on her end. A door, footsteps, then Andrew's voice, muffled in the background. Emily's breathing quickened. "You're making this up because you can't accept I've grown up," she cried. "You can't stand that I don't need you anymore." "Emily, please just look at the evidence. There are other women: Lily Chen, Rachel Walsh. It's the same script, exactly the same." The phone shifted. Andrew's tone replaced my daughter's tears, smooth, confident, lacquered. "Mr. Rice, I understand your concern, but these accusations are false." I was cleared. "The case is pending, Andrew," I said, voice steady. "I have the current filings." "You're looking at outdated claims from disgruntled partners," he countered. "Emily knows the truth about my finances." Behind him, I heard my daughter sobbing. His voice softened, dropping into the register of control. "Sweetheart, your father is trying to sabotage our happiness. Some parents can't let go." "Let me talk to Emily," I said, and my voice came out harder than I intended. "She's too upset," he replied. "These false accusations have deeply hurt her." Then Emily, shrill with pain. "How could you do this to me? How could you lie about Andrew just to ruin my wedding?" "I'm not lying," I said. "There are photos, engagement rings identical to yours." "Enough. You can't stand that I found someone who loves me for who I am, not who you want me to be." "Emily," I begged, my voice breaking, "please look at the evidence before you marry him. I'm sending everything to your email right now." "Don't come to my wedding," she said, ice in her tone. "I'm serious. You've chosen lies over your daughter's happiness." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, the room around me a field of wreckage, manila folders, printouts, sticky notes, the remains of a relationship 28 years in the making. Through the window, couples drifted to Valentine's brunch, oblivious to the war in room 412. The email I'd promised remained unsent, my finger hovering. Andrew had won this round, twisting my protection into persecution, my love into control. But fathers don't give up easily. A month crawled by after that call. 31 days of wandering my Brooklyn apartment like a ghost. The evidence folders sat untouched on the kitchen table, their manila skins warped by coffee rings and the humid breath of my sleepless nights. Each morning I checked my phone for messages that never came, stared at Emily's contact photo until my eyes burned. The stack of unsent letters grew apologies that began, "Dear Emily," and ended as crumpled paper in the wastebasket. I pulled Andrew's court documents out for the 100th time, while Eleanor's photograph watched from the mantel. Maybe I'd moved too fast. Maybe the internet lied. Maybe photos could be tampered with, court records misread. "She's a grown woman," I told the empty room. My neighbors left worried voicemails. Mrs. Patterson downstairs said I looked thin. The mailman asked if I'd been traveling. The doctor's office called about an appointment I didn't remember making. But March 14th was different. Tomorrow my daughter would marry Andrew Kensington, with or without my blessing. I lifted Eleanor's silver frame, thumb tracing her smile. "What would you do?" Her eyes seemed to whisper the answer I didn't want. Sometimes love means letting go. Maybe the filings were forgeries. Maybe the other women lied. Maybe Andrew really loved Emily, and jealousy had blinded me. Fathers don't surrender their daughters easily. "Maybe those articles are slander," I murmured, closing the folders at last. By noon, I had decided. I would attend the wedding, offer my blessing, and try to mend what I had shattered. The Fifth Avenue jeweler greeted me like an old friend. I had bought Eleanor's ring there 30 years ago. I chose a vintage Cartier necklace, diamonds that held light like captured stars. The saleswoman wrapped it in ivory silk and slid in a card. "For my daughter on her wedding day. All my love, Dad." At JFK, I balanced the gift on my lap and rehearsed my speech. I would tell Emily I'd been wrong, that Andrew seemed like a good man, that I wanted only her happiness. As the plane lifted into the dusk, New York's lights receded like dying embers. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine tomorrow as a beginning, not an end. The Fairmont San Francisco rose before me like a wedding cake carved from marble and crystal, draped with banners announcing the Rice Kensington celebration. I stepped from the taxi, heart hammering, adjusted my navy suit, the same one I wore when I walked Emily across the stage at her college graduation. Guests streamed through the entrance in silk and laughter. I recognized faces: Emily's college roommate, my brother Robert from Boston, neighbors from Queens. Then I saw it. My own face stared back from an ornate easel near the doors, blown up in glossy black and white. Beneath it, elegant calligraphy delivered the blow. No entry. Henry Rice, by request of the bride and groom. The gift slipped in my suddenly numb hands. Guests slowed, read the sign, then hurried on, their glances a mix of curiosity and pity. A security guard appeared at my elbow, voice professional but not unkind. His name tag read, Hernandez. Sir, you're not expected here. This is my daughter's wedding, I said. The words rasped out, nearly lost under the hotel's soft music. I'm very sorry, Hernandez said, shifting awkwardly. I have clear instructions. Through the glass I saw the reception hall, white roses spilling from crystal stands, tables set with china that probably cost more than my rent. My $50,000 spun into a beauty I was forbidden to witness. Conversations hushed as guests passed the easel, some shocked, some embarrassed for me. I set the Cartier box beside my own photograph, the ivory silk bright against polished marble. The diamonds inside would catch the light on Emily's throat if she ever opened it. Now I understand, Andrew, I said quietly. Now I understand everything. Hernandez stepped back, maybe hearing danger in my calm. But I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was too small. This wasn't rejection, it was calculated humiliation, a public mark branding me as too toxic to enter my own daughter's happiness. Andrew hadn't just won Emily. He had ensured that everyone would know how completely I'd been cast out. I straightened my tie and nodded. Could you call me a taxi, please? I need to reach Chase Bank before they close. Relief flickered across Hernandez's face. Of course, sir. I took one last look at the easel. The man in the photo still believed his daughter might choose family over a stranger's manipulation. That man was a fool. He had learned better now. The taxi dropped me at Chase Bank downtown at exactly 4:30 p.m., long shadows striping the granite facade. Inside, the Saturday skeleton crew moved with the slow focus of people waiting for the clock. I approached the desk with the same methodical calm I'd once used to close million-dollar deals. The banker name tag Amanda looked up with practiced politeness. Good afternoon. How can I help you? I need to cancel a check immediately, I said, placing my ID and account documents on the polished counter. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Certainly. The check number and amount? $2,847, $50,000, made out to Andrew Kensington, I said, spelling the surname carefully while she typed. If the check has already been submitted, Amanda cautioned, this could create problems for the recipient. That's exactly what I'm interested in, I said. Understanding moved across her face. She had seen this before. Betrayed partners, family wars, money turned into a weapon. She slid the stop payment forms forward without another word. There's a $35 fee. The cancellation will take effect immediately. Any attempt to cash or deposit will be declined. Perfect. I signed with the same careful signature I had used on Andrew's original check. The irony did not escape me. The stop payment is active, Amanda said, handing me the receipt. Here's your confirmation. I folded the paper neatly and tucked it beside Emily's graduation photo in my wallet. Somewhere across the city, Andrew was likely reviewing final details, confident his vendors would be paid, his deception complete. By now, the ceremony had probably begun. Emily would be walking down the aisle in the dress he'd chosen, guests fresh from reading my banishment in swirling ink. The quartet would be tuning, the photographer would be framing joy. But soon the caterers would demand payment, the florists would ask to settle accounts, and Andrew would discover that his primary funding source had evaporated. Anything else today, Mr. Rice? Amanda asked. Thank you, I said. You've been extremely helpful. I stepped into the golden afternoon, the confirmation receipt in my pocket like a loaded weapon. Behind me, the systems updated, marking check number 2,847 as void, preparing to embarrass Andrew in front of every vendor and guest at his stolen wedding. The ride back to the airport passed in clean, satisfied silence. Sometimes the best revenge is simply removing the foundation beneath someone else's lies. 2 hours later, I sat in my hotel room, city lights scattered like diamonds across the windows. The receipt lay folded in my wallet, cold as a bullet. The Fairmont's ballroom would be glowing now, the quartet easing into Pachelbel as Emily floated across the marble in whatever gown Andrew had convinced her to buy. The thought should have broken me. Instead, I felt only cold satisfaction. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert. Beautiful ceremony. Wish you were here. Another. Payment terminal acting up. Very strange. A third. From an unknown number. Andrew looks like he's seen a ghost. I could see it unfold. Andrew approaching the catering manager, producing the black Amex he'd flaunted at that restaurant. The sharp electronic beep of decline, then another card, and another, each failure echoing through the ballroom like a gunshot. "Mr. Kensington, we need immediate payment before serving the main course," the manager would say, firm but professional. I knew the script. I'd worked with enough vendors to recognize the point of no return. "There must be a mistake," Andrew would insist, sweat threading his hairline despite the ballroom's perfect climate. The musicians would stop authorization denied. The photographer would begin packing lenses, apologizing, bound to contract. The florist would quietly reclaim centerpieces, inventory before artistry. "Andrew, what's happening? Why is everyone leaving?" Emily's voice would splinter, rising in panic. Guests would murmur, wealthy friends and family watching as vendors dismantled the fantasy they had admired an hour before. Phones would rise. The tide of social posts would turn from congratulations to a public autopsy. "Your father did this," Andrew would finally snarl, mask cracking. "He ruined our wedding. I wasn't there to watch it burn. I was 3,000 miles away, room service coffee cooling, watching my phone stutter with incoming calls from a number I knew too well. I let them all go to voicemail. 73 missed calls. I counted twice, the red badge swelling with each desperate attempt. Andrew's number dominated, but between them, Emily's contact photo appeared, her smile flickering like a distress flare. The messages told the story I had set in motion but couldn't witness. The first, at 7:15 in the evening, still carried the patina of control. "Mr. Rice, there seems to be a technical issue with the banking systems. If you could call back." By message 15, the mask sagged. "Sir, I need you to contact the bank immediately. This is extremely urgent." By message 37, panic. "Please, Mr. Rice, the wedding is falling apart. There's been a terrible mistake." I poured a scotch from the minibar and settled into the armchair by the window. Manhattan glittered below. Across the country, Andrew's carefully built world collapsed in real time. The background noise shifted, vendors arguing, guests murmuring, the hollow echo of magic being stripped from a ballroom. His voice frayed as the pleas curdled into threats, then into something like confession. "I know what you think happened, but I can explain. The money? Yes, I needed help, but I was going to pay you back. Please, your daughter is crying." Message 68 changed everything. Emily's voice, small and broken. "Dad, please come back." Andrew confessed everything. I set the glass down and stared at the phone. This was the vindication I'd wanted, and yet hearing my daughter cry cinched my chest in a fist of grief I hadn't expected. The 74th call came at 9:43 p.m. I answered. "Dad," Emily whispered. "Everything." "What exactly did he tell you? About the money, the debts, the other women?" "He confirmed what the documents showed," I said gently. "You were right about everything," she breathed. "The court cases, the lies, everything." Behind her, Andrew yelled, voice high and ragged, "She doesn't understand I love her. The money doesn't matter." "I'll return to San Francisco," I said, measuring each word. "But I won't pay for anything. After the photo, after the humiliation, I'm not writing another check." "Understood, Dad," she said. "Just, please be here. I need you. Pack your things, sweetheart. We'll figure the rest out tomorrow." I hung up and booked the red-eye. Outside, New York slept. 3,000 miles away, justice had finally found Andrew Kensington. 3 months later, the heat of summer shimmered off Brooklyn's cracked sidewalks, rising in waves that bent the air. Children played with sprinklers in the distance. Their laughter carried on the thick July breeze, while the smell of hot asphalt lingered. I was in my apartment, pacing slowly, the familiar creak of old floorboards beneath my feet, when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of cautious footsteps climbing the stairs. Each thud grew louder, deliberate, as though carrying the weight of the world. My chest tightened. Some instinct told me before I even looked. Through the peephole, I saw her. Emily. She stood in the dim hallway, framed by peeling wallpaper and the flickering bulb above. Her face was pale, hollow, her skin almost translucent from sleepless nights. Her eyes were rimmed in red, but behind them flickered a determination I hadn't seen since she was a teenager standing firm in a debate against her mother. 2 battered suitcases sat beside her old leather ones we had once used on family trips upstate. Now they looked worn, dented, the zippers frayed, silent witnesses to a life that had come undone. Before she could raise her hand to knock, I swung the door open. Her lips parted, trembling. "Dad, forgive me. You were right about everything." The words tumbled from her like stones breaking free from a dam. Her body gave way, collapsing into my arms. I caught her as though she were that same little girl who once scraped her knee learning to ride a bike. Her shoulders shook violently, sobs tearing loose after months of being buried under pride and fear. I held her tightly, pressing her head against my chest, terrified that if I loosened my grip, she would slip back into the darkness that had almost swallowed her. "He took everything, Dad," she whispered between sobs. "The house, the savings, even Grandma's necklace." Her voice fractured, as fragile as shattered glass. The shame in her eyes was almost unbearable. I realized then that Andrew hadn't only stolen money or possessions, he had stolen something far more precious, her ability to trust, her belief that the world could still be kind. I guided her inside. We sat together on the leather sofa, the very place where, months earlier, this nightmare had begun with a glowing video call. Back then, Andrew's smile had filled the screen, charming and calculated. Now it was Emily beside me, broken but finally free. The evidence files that had once littered the room were gone, handed over to the FBI long ago. Only Eleanor's framed photograph remained above the mantel. Her calm smile looked down on us, timeless, as if she had been waiting for this moment of return. The television droned softly in the background, half forgotten until suddenly his face appeared. Andrew, but not the polished man in tailored suits. This Andrew had hollow eyes, his dark hair matted, his once perfect jaw shadowed with stubble. The mugshot drained him of charm. The anchor's voice was steady, clinical, each word a hammer striking the coffin of his illusions. "Andrew Kensington has been arrested for large-scale fraud. Authorities report he stole more than $2 million from victims across multiple states." The figure rang out like a sentence carved in stone. Emily's fingers tightened around mine until our knuckles turned white. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt the chasm between us begin to narrow, the wound start to knit. "They called me yesterday," she murmured, voice hoarse. "I wasn't his only victim, was I?" I shook my head. "Number Sophia Martinez, Lily Chen, Rachel Walsh. He left scars everywhere he went. But you," I turned to her, squeezing her hand, "you will be the last." Her shoulders sagged, part relief, part exhaustion. The television continued, reporters listing every crime, every false identity, every bank account drained. With each fact laid bare, Andrew's image unraveled further, until all that was left was the hollow husk of a con man. "Justice will be served," I said firmly, pulling her closer. "Last week I testified before the grand jury," she whispered. Her words trembled, but there was a flicker of steel in her tone. "They said he could face 15 to 20 years. Outside, Brooklyn carried on families clearing dinner plates, children laughing over homework, lovers strolling past bodegas lit with neon. Ordinary lives, the kind of lives I had envied bitterly in my darkest hours. Now, sitting beside my daughter, scarred but unbroken, I realized that we too would begin again. I lifted my gaze to Eleanor's photo on the mantel. For the first time in years, her smile seemed brighter, alive. It was as though she was with us, nodding, approving, watching as father and daughter finally found their way back to one another. Sometimes, protecting the ones you love means making choices they will hate you for. Sometimes it means standing alone against their fury. But love endures, truth prevails, and when justice finally arrives, it tastes sweeter than any revenge. I pressed Emily's hand to my heart. "We'll rebuild," I whispered. And in her tearful nod, I saw the promise of healing. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to life.